All right, everybody, what's going on? How y'all doing? Welcome to today's edition of SWAC Talk, the show we cover the SWAC inside and out. Of course, I'm your tour guide around the SWAC, C. Wells coming at you, and we gonna continue our little series of checking out the standings as we make our way toward the end of the basketball season. This show will cover men's and women's basketball. Sunday will be my big men and women basketball recap, standing wise. Monday or Tuesday, I'll be talking about the standings after the men's games on February 24th. And then, after that, we only have two more weekends before the season is over with. So we are coming down to crunch time, man. This is the best time of year. These races are still kind of iffy. I think the women's side maybe the women's side is a little bit more clearer, not a whole lot, but it's a little bit more clearer. But there's still a lot of ties and things to move around. So we're gonna look at both sets of standings, and I'm gonna give my thoughts on where everybody stands and all of that. So y'all make sure y'all check out those socials: Facebook is Swag Talk, Twitter Swag Talk 76, Instagram Swag Talk. Don't forget to like the video, comment, and share your thoughts on this conference race as we make our way toward the SWAC tournament in Atlanta. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel while you're here and hit that notification bell to be alerted to when the videos drop. So let's go ahead and jump into this without any further delay. We're going to start off with the women's side. We're going to run through the standings as they are right now. Then we'll go team by team and look at kind of if anybody has any options of moving up or down. So Texas Southern leads the SWAC right now. They're 13-2, 14 and 12 overall. They won two games in a row. Southern is a half game back at 12-2, 14-13 overall. They've won five games in a row. Alabama A&M is 12-3, 19-8 and overall, and they're on a four-game winning streak. Jackson State is 11-3, 13-12 overall. They've lost one. Grambling 8-6, 11-14 overall. They've lost one. Alcorn 7-7, 9-16 overall. They won one. FAMU is 6-9, 9-17 overall. They won one. Bethune-Cookman 6-9, 9-18 overall. They've lost one. Prairie View 5-10, and they are 8-16 overall. They won two games in a row. Alabama State 4-11, 6-21 overall. They've lost two in a row. Valley 3-12, 4-22 overall. They've lost three in a row. And Pine Bluff is 1-14 and 3-22 overall. They've lost seven games in a row. So looking at this breakdown, and we'll start at the bottom. Pine Bluff, they are pulling up their last at 1-14. They don't really have a lot going their way. This team needs wins, and they need them in the worst way. They're two games out of 10th, but they haven't really done much. Like I said, they got one win on the season, so I don't really foresee them really getting anything going. They're gonna be in a tough spot. They not a lot there for them. So I I don't really, like I said, I don't really forecast them getting much action as they have already lost to Texas Southern and Prairie View this weekend. So their next matchup will be on Thursday. Excuse me, their next matchup will be on Saturday as they face Mississippi Valley. So um, the opportunity for wins are slipping away. They only have three games left. They have Valley on Saturday. Then on Thursday, March 6th, they play Jackson State, and they close out with Alcorn on March 8th. So not a lot there. They would basically have to go 3-0 and hope somebody else loses to kind of get in that 10th spot. And so not much there. They don't have any tiebreakers. They lost the season series to Bama State, who's in 10th place right now, and they trail Valley by seven. They trail Prairie View by seven points in the point differential, and they trail Valley. They lead Valley by 29 points, but not a lot there. So I don't really see them doing much. So moving up to number 11, that's Valley. They're 3-12. They They get Pine Bluff on Saturday. So again, kind of similar situation. They are only one game behind Bama State, so they do have an opportunity, but they don't have a tiebreaker over the Hornets. They lose their tiebreaker by 4 points in the point differential. Other tiebreakers that they have, they lost the season series to Bethune-Cookman. They lost the season series to FAMU. Both of those were one-game series. They lead Alcorn by 4 points in the point differential, and that series is Valley up 1-0. They split with Prairie View. They have a plus 10 point differential, and like I said, they trail Pine Bluff by 29. So they have some room in front of them. If some things can go their way, they could jump up to that 10th spot because Bama State they have a tough finish ahead of them. So not to say that Valley doesn't. Like I said, they get Pine Bluff, which is should be a game that they win. Although they did lose to this team by 29 points, but Pine Bluff should be a winnable game. Then they have Alcorn and Jackson State, two teams who are very much in the mix for the tournament. So not an easy closeout for them. I couldn't see them maybe winning one out of the two, finishing 4-14, and depending on what Bama State does, that could put them in a tie for 10th place, which they ultimately would not win. So they have to avoid tying with um, they have to avoid time with Bama State, and I don't know if they're going to be able to make enough motion to get past the Hornets. So they're on the outside looking in, and they're probably going to finish on the outside looking in, but they're not quite at the spot where you want to close the door on them yet. Number 10 is Alabama State. They're 4-11. They get Alabama A&M on Saturday. Um, they have like two tiebreakers going their way. One of them is very important, and that's Prairie View. They won that series 1-0 and they trail the Panthers by one game. So um, if they can pick up a win here and here or there, they could find themselves in the ninth spot. Although 7, 8, 9, 10 are going to have to play in that playing game anyway. I think matchup wise, there's not a lot of difference there. They did lose to Bethune-Cookman they did lose to Bethune-Cookman and FAMU. So that's not a good matchup, so to speak, when you get in a tournament. But they should be in. I don't really see anything that may keep them out. They do have a tough finish though. They finished with Alabama A&M, Grambling, who is battling it out for the tournament, who's battling it out for a mid-tier seed, and Southern, who's battling for the top seed with Alabama A&M. So they playing two teams who are battling it out for the regular season championship, and Grambling, who also is in the mix for a solid seed. So they don't have a good ending at all. I can see them losing all three of those games. Um, there are two out of three are on the road as well. So that also kind of shifts some things. So it could get interesting between them and Valley. I don't know if they're going to be able to catch Prairie View. They're going to have some upsets to catch the Panthers. Um, so we'll see if they do it. Prairie View is 5-10. Um, they are sitting in the ninth slot. They get their next game is next Thursday at Jackson State, so that's a big game for them. JSU will be coming into that game off of a loss, so they'll have to they'll have to see they get Jackson State and Alcorn this upcoming weekend. Um, if they want to make a move, those are the kind of games that they need to do it. So they close out tough too, with Jackson State, who is battling it out for the top spot. Alcorn, who is in the middle pack, but could move up to probably 5 or so, depending on how things go. And Texas Southern, who leads the conference right now. So I don't know if they gonna be able to get any of those games. That's probably going to be another sticky point for these teams, and they have 2 out of the 3 on the road as well, so gonna be tough. Like I said, if you want to make a move up, it's gonna take some real work and winning some games, putting some upsets for these lower tier teams. They do trail the seventh and eighth seed by one game, so the opportunity to move up is there if those teams falter. Um, they lost the season series to FAMU, 1-0. They beat Bethune-Cookman 1-0. They also lost the season series to Bama State, 1-0. They tied Valley, but they lost their series by 10-point differential, and they did sweep Pine Bluff, um, and they lead Alcorn 1-0 by 10 points. So they do have that tiebreaker under their belt if they can even get up there. That's gonna take Alcorn losing 3 games to drop to even drop to 10 losses to even be close to Prairie View. So I don't really see them making a lot of movement here. Like I said, they don't have a lot going for them easily in conference. Um, so they're gonna have to pull off some upsets to really kind of make headway. Either that or hope that other teams come down to them, and then kind of getting a big tie and see what happens. But we do have a tie for seventh place. We'll start with Bethune-Cookman, is um who is who is eighth place. They did lose to FAMU in the opening game of the season by 8 points, so they do trail that tiebreaker by 8 points. They need to beat them in their final game by 9 points to pick up a win. They are 6-9. They have 3 games left. Um, this upcoming weekend, their first game was on Thursday at hosting Grambling, and then they get Southern on Monday. I mean, they get Southern on Saturday. So again, they have a tough closeout. They have Grambling, Southern, and FAMU. FAMU is an important game in that stretch because they're tied with them. Um, I don't know if they're going to be able to make a lot of headway between these two teams. Um, Most likely they split the Grambling and Southern games, and then that makes the FAMU game that much important. I can honestly say the same thing for 7 and 8. Um, but I think the games that at home this weekend coming up are huge for these two teams. If they can find a way to win them both, that puts them at 8 and 9 coming out of that weekend with one game left, giving them a chance to finish 9-9. Whoever wins that game will finish 9-9 and probably finish in the seventh spot, um, depending on what other people do. But they have to, like I said, they have to get past Southern and Grambling, respectively. Looking at FAMU, I'm just going to put them here because, like I said, they tied and they play identical schedules. Um, FAMU, they lost the season series to Alcorn 2-0. They did beat Bethune-Cookman, like I said, by 8. They swept Bama State 2-0. They beat Valley 1-0. They beat Prairie. They won the season series against Prairie View 1-0, and they trailed Grambling by 14. So they need a big win on Thursday. Excuse me, on Saturday against Grambling, to get a chance to get a tiebreaker. But it starts with their games in Tallahassee on Thursday against Southern. If they want to make that late push, they're gonna have to pull off an upset in that game to give themselves any kind of wiggle room and kind of separate themselves from Bethune-Cookman. Um, looking at what they're trailing, Alcorn is ahead of them by 2 games, and so the Braves have 4 games left, 2 this weekend, two next weekend, and so they close out a little bit differently, and we've transitioned to the Braves who are in sixth place. Like I said, they're 7-7. They split the season series with Bethune-Cookman. They lost that by 3 in the point differential. They swept FAMU. They lost the season series to Grambling 1-0. They beat Bama State 1-0. They trailed Prairie View by -4, and they trailed Prairie View by 10. So they need to kind of get on a good foot right now. I think they're in a solid spot. They are obviously in. There's really no way they can miss the tournament. So they just need to kind of win. They need to kind of pick up some wins in this final stretch. They have 3 games I think that are very winnable. Although they did lose 2 of those games already, but they have a better chance in these games the second go around, and that's Prairie View on Saturday. And then Thursday, March 6th, they get Valley, and then Saturday, March 8th, they get Pine Bluff. They open their last stretch of games with Texas Southern at home, so they're gonna, that's a tough first game at home to start that stretch. Um, if they can go 3 out of 4, then you're looking at a 10-8 finish, and that's pretty solidly in the sixth spot. Um, excuse me, could be even up to fifth if Grambling drops a couple games there, and they don't have a tiebreaker over Grambling. So even if they finish there, if they both finish 10-8, um, they would still be the sixth spot. But they are in, and this is a dangerous team. They beat Jackson State, they beat Southern. But they lost to Valley and Prairie View, so this is the kind of team that you never know what you're going to get when you play them. But they can be dangerous in a one game situation. This is the kind of team that can knock you out of the tournament if you're a high seed. So I would be wary of them. Like I said, they're 7-7. Most likely they'll probably I say they go 3-4. I mean 3-1 in their final 4 games, and that will put them at 10-8. So I think they're gonna be pretty solidly in that sixth spot unless something happens with Grambling. Grambling is fifth at 8-6. They get Bethune-Cookman on Thursday. Um, they have they're in a good spot. They're 3 games out of that third and fourth place. So it would take a bad finish for those teams in front of them. I do think when you look at the SWAC women's basketball, that there's a couple tiers. There's the top 4 who are probably all championship contenders. And then you have 2 wild cards in Grambling and Alcorn. And then you have a couple of teams that they're not necessarily contenders, but they could, sneak up and get a game here and there. And that's your 7 and 8 teams. And then 9 and 10 are kind of their own little zone. And then 11 and 12 are kind of like a tier. So it kind of breaks up a little evenly. And I think that difference between fourth and fifth is pretty big. Like I said, it's a 3 game gap, and it's probably gonna continue to stay that way. Like I said, Grand League is Bethune-Cookman and FAMU. This upcoming weekend, those are 2 teams that are behind them by 3 games, so not necessarily in danger of them catching them. If Grambling um, if Grambling lost out, they would finish 8 and 10. That could put them in a potential tie with those teams if they all come up big. But right now, like I said, they close out in Florida, and then they get Alabama A&M and Bama State at home to close out the season. So they have a tough road ahead of them as well. They got one team who is battling it out for the tournament, for the top spot, and then a couple of teams who are in the tournament, just looking to kind of hold on and maybe make a little push. Like I said, three out of 4 in this, like I said, makes them 11-7, and that's pretty solidly in that fifth spot. Um, if they, like I said, they drop one loss, then they have no chance of really moving beyond that fifth spot, because I don't think any of the teams ahead of them, who all have 4 games left, are gonna lose all 4. So barring some chaos, they're probably gonna be locked in that fifth spot. They could slide if they drop a couple games, but I don't think they drop any lower than maybe 7th or 8th, depending on what those teams do. But I think they're pretty solidly in that fifth spot. And now we get to this point where things get really interesting, and that's basically battling out for the top seed. There's a 1 game difference between first place and fourth place, and there's opportunity for some teams. There's also not as much opportunity for other teams. But Alabama A&M is they're in the fourth spot. Well, really they're in the third spot. So we'll come back to them. Jackson State is in the fourth spot at 11-3. They get Prairie View at home on Thursday, and Saturday is the game against Texas Southern. That's a big game, obviously. Um, a loss there probably knocks them out of contention for the championship in the regular season because they close out Wood Valley and Pine Bluff, which I think should be wins. I can see them going 3-4. They can find a way to beat Texas Southern, who they lost to already. They would need to beat them by 16 to win that tiebreaker. So they don't have a lot going their way tiebreaker wise. They lost to Southern in a one-game series. They trailed Texas Southern by 15 points. They did beat Alabama A&M, so that is one that could help them if they finish tied with the Bulldogs. But right now, Jackson State doesn't have a lot going for them. That game against TSU on Saturday coming up is huge. But gotta get past Prairie View first, and they got upset by Alcorn on Saturday. So you just never know how things are gonna shake out. But I don't really see them finishing. No, I don't really see them finishing. Um, Worst case scenario, they go 1-3, which I don't think, but that's the worst case scenario. They go 1-3, which makes them 12-6, which most likely keeps them at fourth. Unless Grambling won all four of their games. But they did beat Grambling, so they will have a tiebreaker there. So they will finish no worse than fourth, depending on what happens with Grambling. If they could find a way to beat TSU and finish out 4-0, then they are smack dab in there for the championship, depending on what happens with Southern and Alabama A&M. But they're in a good spot. They do have a game that can help them make a move, but they don't have the tiebreakers over the teams in front of them. So that other than the A&M, so that's kind of huge. Like I said, Bulldogs are third right now. They're 12-3. They get Bama State on Saturday. Um, they haven't really beaten anybody ahead of them. They lost to Jackson State, which was a one-game series. They lost to Texas Southern, which was a one-game series, and they lost to Southern by 6 at home. So they get Bama State. They get Bama State on Saturday. They get Southern on Saturday, March 8th, and Grambling on Thursday, March 6th. So that Southern game to close out the season could be the difference between 1, 2, 3. So that this is huge. They get Bama State on the road. All three of their last games are on the road, so they're gonna have to be road warriors to kind of get it done. And so going to Montgomery playing the Hornets is gonna be big. Just for rivalry's sake. You survive that game. You go to Grambling, you win that game, which they lead Grambling by 12 points in the tiebreaker. And then you get Southern on the road to close out. 3-0 puts you at 13. I mean, 3-0 puts you at 15-3, which could be first place. Probably no worse than second place. 2-1 puts you at 14-4, which again could be anywhere between second and fourth. If they were to go worse than that, then obviously they're gonna probably be stuck in that fourth spot. Excuse me, they'd be down to the fourth spot depending on what happens with Jackson State. So there's some room for upward mobility. They don't have to really worry about dropping below 4. If it's possible for them, you want to get that 1 or 2 seed just so you don't have that extra game to play. Early. You kind of get a little rest day before everything else. So I look at it like they are in a good spot, but they're gonna have to beat a team in front of them in Southern who they hadn't beat yet, which would give them the first victory over anybody else in that 4 team race. Speaking of Southern, they're a half game out of first at 12-2. They're playing. They won 5 games in a row since their loss to Alcorn, and so they get a decent challenge on the road with the Florida teams, and then they get Alabama State, and then Alabama A&M. So if Southern, who is a team that plays great defense, doesn't always play great offense, So that makes them susceptible to losses to teams that are not as good as they are. Because they'll play those low scoring ugly games, and if one of those teams can hit some shots, you beat Southern like 52-50 or something like that. So they're not steamrolling everybody, but they are. They did pick up a big win at Grambling just to kind of keep pace. Um, they are definitely in the mix for that one seed. They're solidly there. Depending on what happens with Texas Southern against Jackson State, that could be a boost for Southern, but they're gonna probably have to win out to get that one spot. I don't know if they can do it, but they do have the tiebreaker over Texas Southern because they have a +6 point differential. So if they can finish as long as they finish tied with TSU, then they would get the first spot out of those two teams as long as nobody else is in the mix. So they it's simple for Southern. You win your last 4 games, you get the one seed, no matter what TSU does. You drop a game, you kind of slide into that group of teams with 3 losses, but Jackson State could lose to Texas Southern, which would drop them to 4. Um, Southern still has a game against Alabama in them, which still could help them. So they it's simple for Southern, it's simple for TSU. They have simple objectives, and looking at Texas Southern, they need to have Southern lose a game and they need to win out. They have Jackson State, Alcorn, and Prairie View to close out. Those are all 3 games that they can win. They beat Jackson State already by 15, so they as long as they don't get blowed out, if they happen to drop that Jackson State game, then they would still keep that tiebreaker. So if they can finish, they can go 3-0 and finish 16-2, then they're gonna win the SWAC regular season if Southern drops 1 game. So that's all they need to do is win out. There's no other things other than win out and have Southern lose a game, and you get the one seed. So it's pretty simple at the top. Just win out, and like I said, their teams have all 4 teams have a game against one of the other 4 teams. So there's opportunity for somebody to make some space between somebody else. So it's pretty simple for the top 2 spots. Win out and you got it. So it went out and had the other one lose one. If TSU, Southern just need to win out no matter what TSU do. So that this is gonna be a pretty interesting finish. As both teams, as all the teams have kind of a they everybody kind of has a bunch of games against tournament teams except for Jackson and Alcorn, who close out with the 2 teams who probably not going to make the tournament. So that's a good opportunity for those teams to kind of find themselves in a top spot. So the race for the top 2 seeds is still ongoing. Like I said, we got to wait till Thursday before we get any kind of movement. But I do think there's going to be a little movement. I don't know how much at the top, but like I said, we'll see how that goes. It's a lot more convoluted and crazy on the men's side, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at those standings. Um, Starting off with Southern, who is 13-1. They're 18-9 overall. They've won 3 games in a row. Jackson State 10-4. They're 10-17 overall. They won 2 games in a row. Bama State 9-5. They won 4 games in a row. FAMU 9-5. They lost one. They're 12-13 overall. Bama State 13-14 overall. Bethune-Cookman 9-5. 12-15 overall. They won one. Texas Southern 9-5. 12-15 overall. They won one. Also, Alcorn is 8-6, 8-19 overall. They've lost 2 games in a row. Grambling 6-8, 9-18 overall. They lost one. Alabama A&M 5-9, 9-18 overall. They've lost one. And Pine Bluff 2-12, 5-22 overall. They won one. And Valley Prairie View 3-11. I skipped right over the Panthers. Panthers 3-11, 4-23 overall. They've lost 10 games in a row. They haven't won a game in so long. Like I say, it's been ridiculously long since they won a game. Their last win was on Monday, January 13th. So they haven't won a game in more than a month. and I don't know if they're gonna be able to win one, but they still clinging on to that 10th spot with their fingernails right now. And like I said, Pine Bluff is 2-12, 5-22 overall. They won one. Valley 1-13 overall. 1-13 in conference, 3-24 overall. They've lost 5 games in a row. Looking at where we stand again, we'll start at the bottom. It's pretty simple. Valley, they need to win out. They need to win out. That will put them at they have what they have 4. They have 3 games left. So they have to win out there. Like I said, they're 1-13 right now. Um, they need to win out to get themselves any chance of anything happening. They have Pine Bluff coming up on Saturday, and let me put where the schedule. Like I said, they have Pine Bluff coming up on Saturday, so that's a big game. And then they close out at hosting Alcorn and Jackson State. So they, like I said, they're 1-14. I don't know, it said 1-13, but they're 1-14. So if they went out, they finished 4-14, which is not out of the mix. Depending on what happens with Prairie View, who knows where Prairie View is going to end up. Prairie View could honestly not win another game this season. So that could slide them completely out of the tournament and bump up one of those 2 teams behind them if they can win games. Now, asking Valley to win 3 games in a row when they haven't won but one all year is a tough ask, but it's feasible. It's mathematically feasible. Is it realistic? Probably not. They're most likely going to finish 1-17. So it's just not much there for them in that way. Pine Bluff, like I said, they're 2-13. The standings for some reason left off a game. They're 2-13. They also have 3 games left. They get Valley on Saturday, which is a huge game. They lost to Valley. They trail that tiebreaker by 6 points. Not that if they lose the Valley, then it doesn't even matter. So they need to beat Valley by 7 points just to keep that behind them. They do have an interesting tiebreaker against Prairie View. These teams both won. They split the season series, which is not odd, but they both won by 11 points, and they both won by the exact score, 75-64. Both teams won 75-64. So there's no tie. You can't break the tie there. That the next tiebreaker would be their best record against the top teams moving down. And right now, right now, Pine Bluff has the better win out of the 2. In terms of standings, they beat Texas Southern, so that would kind of break that tiebreaker if they would happen to finish tied with Prairie View. So they do have a very important tiebreaker under their belt, but the finish is not going to be easy. Like I said, Valley, who you hadn't beat yet, Jackson State and Alcorn. So one out of 2 puts you at 13-3, 3-13. Like I said, Prairie View honestly could lose out. They could honestly lose out, and if they do, and Pine Bluff beats Valley, then Pine Bluff gets in the tournament because they will win the tiebreaker over Prairie View. So it's a pretty possible chance that the Golden Lions do jump into that 10th spot and make the tournament because Prairie View they just are on such a cold streak like I've never seen before. I've seen teams have big slides in the middle of the season, but I've never seen one this big to go from basically second place or so early in the season to almost out of the tournament, if not out of the tournament by the end of the season. So Pine Bluff has a chance. They win one game and hope Prairie View loses out, they're in. So even though they took a long time to pick up wins, they still had a chance to get in, and they're a team who could maybe steal a game if they got in. So definitely keep an eye on the Golden Lions. Like I said, 10th is Prairie View, that 3-12. I don't know what else. I don't know what else to say. They've lost game after game. They can't they can't get right. And so they close out with Jackson State, and then with Alcorn, and then Jackson State, and then Texas Southern. So those are three tough games, and they could lose all three. So they I don't know, because I have no words for the direction of this team. Um, I don't even know if they're gonna win a game closing out. It's not impossible. Now they do get Texas Southern at home to close out the season, so you could get upset there. Maybe maybe you play well against Alcorn and get upset there. But there's not a lot there. And like I said, looking at tiebreakers for this team, they don't really matter right now because the one that's very important they don't have. So anything else is kind of out of the window. So their main focus and main thing is to snap this losing streak. You do that, you finish no worse than 14-4. How can you say 4-14? And then you're in. So they just need to win a game and then go from there. I think that's their primary objective, because if they continue to lose, they're gonna lose their way right out of the tournament. Unless Pine Bluff can't capitalize. But like I said, they could just get in at 3-13. At 3-15. And Pine Bluff doesn't win. Pine Bluff finishes 2-16, and Valley finishes 2-16, and so they would make it on a monumental losing streak because everybody else lost below them. So I don't see them moving up. It would take winning winning multiple games to move up, and right now let's start with winning one. I don't even know if they're going to do it. Number 9 is Alabama A&M. They're 5-9. They're in a solid spot as well. Is that right? I don't even feel like everything is a game off. I think that is right. Bulldogs get Alabama State on Saturday, and then they close out at Grambling, and then they close out at Grambling and then at Southern. So they have a tough finish. They did lose to Bama State by 4 the first time that they played these guys. So they need a victory there first. They trail Grambling by 11, so they would need to beat Grambling by 12 in Grambling. And then Southern, obviously there's no need to worry about that one, but they can beat Southern. I'm not saying that. I just meant like in terms of tiebreakers. This is a team that could finish. They could finish. I am so confused, man. This is the standings are odd, but they could finish on a 3-game winning streak and put themselves solidly in that 9th spot. I don't see them moving more than one spot because they trail Alcorn by 3 games, and so I don't think they're going to be able to jump up to those guys. They may be able to catch Grambling if they beat Grambling number 1. That would drop them into a tie with them, and then Grambling maybe loses another game. If Bama A&M wins out, then I think they find themselves sitting in a really good spot in terms of making a tournament. I need to look at something. Oh, I'm so confused. For some reason, I feel like everything is a game off, and I need to make sure these numbers are right. But anyway, moving up to Grambling, they are 6-8. They still have 4 games left. They coming off of a loss to Southern, and so they need to start a trip in the worst way. They need to really win both of these games, and then finish strong at home. You obviously don't want to lose at home, so you have to find a way to beat. You have to find a way to beat Alabama A&M, who you beat already, and you beat Bama State too by 10 in Montgomery. So those are 2 games that Grambling does have a legitimate chance of winning. They had their chances against Southern, but they couldn't close it out. Southern went on a big run in the second half to kind of pull away, but Grambling is still a dangerous team because they have Contavious Dozier who can definitely go off at any minute. Um, I know why I'm I apologize. I know why I'm confused in these numbers because I was thinking like the women's games. We still have men's games on Monday, so Bama A&M is 5-9. My math and thought process was all horrible there. They are 5-9 right now. They do have 4 games left. They have FAMU, Bama State, Southern, and Grambling. Okay, uh, I had a brain freeze. So right now they finished 4-0. They would finish 9-9, and that could tie them with Grambling, depending on what Grambling does. Grambling has 4 games left. Um, they have a trip to Florida. Then they have the Alabama schools at home. Um, they like I said, they do have a tiebreaker over Alabama A&M and Bama State. They lost the season series to Alcorn, and they lost the season series to Jackson State. They lost to Texas Southern in the sweep, and they trail Bethune-Cookman by 6, and they beat FAMU by 7. So they do have the opportunity to, if one of those teams comes down their way, it's going to take a lot for those teams to come down their way, especially those 9-5 teams. So right now, I think Grambling's main focus is just to win and maybe catch Alcorn if they can still they can win a couple games. If they come out of this Florida trip at 8-8 and Alcorn maybe falters, then they have a chance to do something. But right now, I think they're probably solidly in that 8 spot. I don't really see them moving to 9, unless Alabama and them beats them by 12 points, which would give them the tiebreaker, and maybe they lose a game or two on that Florida trip. If they do well on that Florida trip, when I say do well, I mean 1-1, 2-0. I think they're in a good spot. Obviously, 2-0 is chef's kiss if you Grambling and then go and if they can close out on a 4-game winning streak, then they would finish 12-6. I mean, if they would finish 10-8, which would be very good for them, and maybe even move them up a spot. But right now, they're pretty solidly in that 8 spot. Alcorn is number 7. They are off on Monday. They have their next game is on Saturday. Um, their next game is on Saturday against Prairie View. So Prairie View struggling. Obviously, you don't want to be the one to break that streak, but that's a winnable game because, like I said, those guys are just out of sorts right now. And so you get them, then you get Texas Southern, which is a big, big game, and then you get Valley and Pine Bluff to close out, which are both winnable games. So a 3-1 finish, I think, is minimum for them, which keeps them still, 3-1 finish makes them finish at 11-7, which depending on what happens in front of them, they could finish anywhere, honestly. So right now, I think it's safe to put them at that 7th spot and in the play-in. But it's because they trail those third place teams by 1 game. If they can finish strong, 3-1, 4-0, then they are in a good spot. And they, like I said, they play a team in front of them in Texas Southern, so they have a chance to make up some ground there if they beat them. Um, and let's see, the TSU tiebreaker. They lost to Texas Southern by 9, so they need to beat them by 10 at home. If they do that, then that puts them in a tie with them, and they win that tiebreaker. Obviously, other teams would become involved in that. So a strong finish for Alcorn can put them um, anywhere in the I would say honestly anywhere from 3 on down. So they honestly, even with chaos, I don't know if it could happen, but 11-7, 30-way tie for second place. Alcorn could make that happen, but right now I think they're in that 7th spot. They may finish 5th or 6th, but right now I think they're in that 7th spot. Now we get to the big jumbled mess of the tie for 3rd place, starting with Texas Southern at 9-5. Um, they get Pine Bluff on Monday. They lost to Pine Bluff, so that's not a given. They lost to them, but I think I think they have a chance to get back right. They get Pine Bluff, and then they get Alcorn and Jackson, and then Prairie View. So they have a tough finish as well, and they get to play teams that are right there in the mix with them. Jackson State, who is a game ahead of them, um, Alcorn, who's a game behind them, and then the two teams who are lower in the standings. If they can win those first two games and go into the final weekend of the season at 11-5, um, I think they have a great chance to make a move. They can honestly finish. I mean, they beat Jackson State once, so it's not impossible. Um, and they beat Alcorn, so they could finish. Um, they could finish 13-5, and be solidly in that second or third spot. So the thing that hurts them is they lost to FAMU and they lost to Bethune, so they can't finish tied with those guys. Um, they did beat Bama State, so in the series 1-0, and they beat Jackson State by 8. So they have some tiebreakers in their pocket, but there are two major ones that are holding them back in terms of moving up pretty far. So they again probably in that 4-6 range, but a strong finish is very possible. It's not impossible to win. It's not impossible to win those 4 games, but they could finish 2-2, which would put them at 11-7. And at that point, you can be tied for 6, 7, 8, well, 6 or 7 at that spot. I don't think they finish anywhere lower than 7, because I do think they're going to win at least 2 of those games to close out. Now, if they finish 9-9 because they slumped, then they can finish as low as 9. But I don't really see that happening. So I think they're in that 5, 6, 7 range. It's going to be a tough team to play in the tournament. Number 5 is FAMU. They slid because Bama State beat them, which is important. Bama State swept them, so they trail that series 2-0 in the loss. Um, they did sweep Alcorn and Jackson State, so those are two big sweeps that can help them, and they trail Bethune by 7. They do have to go to they do have to go to Daytona. They get Alabama A&M on Monday, and so that's not a given. A&M is a team that's pretty tough at home. They just always find a way to kind of get in their own way and not pick up wins. But they have a chance with Southern and Grambling coming up next weekend to kind of finish strong. Like I said, you get Grambling, excuse me, you get you get Grambling, Southern, and then Bethune-Cookman to close out the season after the Alabama A&M game. So get past A&M first. You're sitting at 10-5. Grambling's gonna be tough. Grambling beat them already by 7, and Grambling is a team that, honestly, at this point, there's a good Grambling and bad Grambling, and you don't really know which one you're gonna get. That good Grambling can come in your house and blow you out. The bad Grambling can get beat by you pretty soundly. So if they can't they have to go 2-0 at home. I always say it's important to win your home games, and when you're a top team, you should go 2-0 at home on your home stands. So they need to win those 2 games, and then they need to beat Bethune-Cookman, because if they lose to Bethune-Cookman, they lose their season series, which can kill them in a tie. But it all starts with Alabama A&M. They need, like I said, they need to finish 3-1 or better to really put themselves in a good spot. And they can do it. Bama State just really been their kryptonite this season in close games. They lost 2 games to Bama State by 2 combined points. That's so weird to me. But the Hornets are in front of them at fourth. They're also 9-5. They get Bethune on Monday. Big game there. That's gonna make some room in this tie. Somebody's gonna come out of the weekend at 9-6, and somebody's gonna be 10-5. So if let's say Texas Southern wins, they go to 10-5. FAMU wins, they go 10-5. Bama State wins, they go 10-5. Bethune would drop to 9-6. and be a half game ahead of Alcorn. So that puts them at six. That puts Bethune all the way down to sixth place from third. But if Bama State loses, then they drop to that spot. So somebody's gonna be out of that. Somebody's gonna be out of that mix. Um, and then we only have like three or four teams tied. So it's still a log jam. Everybody has the same scenario basically. Bama State got Bethune, Alabama A&M on Saturday. Then they close out with Southern and then Grambling. They beat Southern, so maybe they can beat them again in Baton Rouge. They lost to Grambling, so they need to beat Grambling by 11. Although I don't really think that's going to factor in any kind of tiebreaker. But you need to win those games. You need to win your home games. So they need to beat Bethune, and then they need to beat Bama A&M. So they have to find a way to get themselves right. Bethune-Cookman, same scenario, just flip. They have to beat Bama State. Then they get Grambling and then Southern and then FAMU. So they have four teams who are all in it. Three out of the four teams are all in their top six. So they have a chance to make a move or they have a chance to slide. Like I said, this Monday is going to clear up some of this. So it should be a little bit easier to look at. But I don't think that that two to six. I don't think that's going to clear up until the end of the season, honestly, because there's going to be so much movement. Jackson State is 2. They're off on Monday. They get take Southern Prairie View, then Valley and Pine Bluff. Same thing I said about those other teams. It applies to Jackson State. Right now, they're in second place by themselves with a 1-game lead, so they do have some wiggle room. They beat Bama State 1-0. They swept Alcorn. They did get swept by FAMU. They swept Bethune, and they trailed TSU by 8 points, so they need to beat them by 9 to kind of keep their tiebreaker in their pocket. So they went out, which is very possible. They finished 14-4, and they finished probably second place, depending on what happens in front of them. But I think right now, the way the schedule shapes up for them, and it's not a given to beat TSU because TSU beat them already. But if they go 4-0, then they are second place at minimum. So it's simple for them. You win, you get top 2 seed. You lose, and who knows what happens. So they just need to win. They just need to win and go from now. 2 games on the road, 2 games at home. It's simple. Southern, they're 13-1 with 4 games left. They need to obviously always 1-1 on a road trip would do them well. They win Saturday. They clinch at least a share of the championship. So if they come out of that Florida trip 2-0, then they win the regular season. If they come out of there 1-1, then obviously the next game will be the most important game. If they go 0-2 on the road, then they come back home at 13-3, and they would need to win those last 2 games to get themselves the championship. So they should finish no worse than a tie for first. If they lose out, then obviously they get them 5 losses. Who knows? But if they finish with 4 losses and Jackson State finishes with 4 losses, Southern wins their tiebreaker. So they need to win 1 game at least to put themselves in the 1 seed. They win, they get the 1 seed no matter what happens. Whether that's Saturday or Monday, they need to win one of those games to get themselves the 1 seed. So it's simple for Southern. Win and you get the 1 seed. You win out, then you have a historical season. You win 1 game and lose 1 game. You get at minimum the 1 seed. So Southern, like I said, Southern Saturday is very important at Bethune. You win that game, they don't have anything else to worry about. You lose that game, then Tallahassee is a must win. So they need to, like I said, they need to go at least. They need to win one of these games on their road trip. If they do that, they get the 1 seed. So it's simple. That'll do it for me, man. This is always crazy. I don't see a whole lot of clarity coming after Monday. Like it was so confusing. I couldn't even. I forgot the men had Monday games. I was confused for like 4 or 5 teams, but I'm right now. So with that being said, man, I'm your tour guide around the SWAC. See, well, signing out, and I will catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.